Hi, everyone here and around the world. Today, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, was important for the United States House Subcommittee on Oversight and Accountability. Starting live on YouTube this morning at 11:35 a.m. Eastern and all other time zones on YouTube, it was finally the second congressional hearing about UFOs in a year and a half since July 26, 2023. That first congressional hearing focused on, quote, unidentified anomalous phenomena / UFOs, implications on national security, public safety, and government transparency, close quote. And then today, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, the second joint subcommittee hearing focused on, quote, unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth, and was on YouTube, close quote. Today's witnesses were Dr. Tim Gallaudet, U.S. oceanographer and retired Rear Admiral for the U.S. Navy, and Chief Officer of Ocean STL Consulting, Marine Technology in San Diego, California, Louis Elizondo, author of Imminent Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, former head of Department of Defense's ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program in the Pentagon, Washington, D.C., Michael Shellenberger, journalist and co-founder of Breakthrough Institute and California Peace Coalition, Berkeley, California, and Michael Gold, former NASA Associate Administrator for Space Policy and Partnerships, member of NASA UAP Independent Study Team. Admiral Gallaudet once led the U.S. Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command, and while on duty observed UAP UFOs, now verified by video footage of UAPs and unidentified submerged underwater objects that included the now famous New York Times headlines, quote, glowing auras and black money, the Pentagon's mysterious UFO program. Look at that thing. U.S. Navy jet encounters unknown object. Copyright 2017 by Helene Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Keene. And I interviewed U.S. Navy pilot David Fravor, who encountered the white Tic Tac UFO UAP and described what happened.
My wingman says, hey, Skipper, do you? And he gets about that much sentence out, and I'm like, what is that? And at first we're looking at the disturbance, which is really what clues our eyes onto where the Tic Tac is at. So we see this, what looks like a seamount under the water. If you put something about 10 feet below the water in the ocean, and as the waves come up, they'll break over the top of it, and you'll get white water. It was crystal clear. There was light winds, so there was no white caps. There's no clouds. It's literally a perfect day. And all of a sudden we see this little white object. So I want you to, in your mind, imagine we're going to use a clock now. So the object is at the middle of the clock, and we're at the 6 o'clock position. Mm-hmm. My wingman is just to the south of me. And we're watching the Tic Tac, and it's over this white disturbance in the water, and it's going north, south, east, west, north, south, east. It's just kind of moving around randomly. And what's interesting when we first see it is the first time you see it, because it's down low over the water, so it's about 50 feet, you think, oh, helicopter. Well, helicopters have a rotor wash. We see them all the time when we're out on the aircraft carrier. It's definitely not a helicopter. We're still at 20,000 feet. I'm like, I'm going to go check this thing out. And I start to descend, and as we get around the corner and I get to about the 12 o'clock position, keep in mind the object is still kind of pointed north-south, it turns, and now it parallels us. So it turns and it kind of points east-west, because we're at 12 o'clock kind of pointing east. It turns and it's kind of pointing west, and it starts coming up. So now it's mirroring us. So now you think, all right, well, it knows we're here. So it's about, at the time I make the move, it's probably, 3,000, 2,500 feet below me. And I cut across from the 8 o'clock and I go towards the 3 o'clock position. And as I'm pulling nose onto the object, I get within about a half mile of it. And it goes in a climb from left to right across my nose. And as soon as it crosses my nose, it rapidly accelerates and disappears. Mm-hmm. So I asked the wingman, because I'm like, well, where'd it go? Because, I mean, it just literally disappeared. My wingmen, they don't see it at all. They're like, it's gone. We're like, well, that was very odd. The object disappears. So we're kind of a little bit, baffled to try and figure out what it is. So as soon as we turn, the controller comes up and he says, hey, sir, you are not going to believe this, but that thing, as you refer to it, is at your cap point.
This is where you were now going to go, the cap point.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the whole time that's elapsed is maybe a couple of minutes for us to turn those jets around and do what we did. And this thing appears 60 miles away. So that's really fast. It's faster than we can go.
And it must have felt eerie that what had just disappeared and the water has gone quiet now is exactly at the cap point that you were just going to go to, but now the object is there.
That is 100% correct. As a matter of fact, I remember telling my backseater, I said, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty weirded out. At this point, I had been flying for 16 years, had 3,500-ish hours, a lot of experience, and never, ever seen anything like this. And we never see it again. We never see it on our radar. We don't know where it goes. Who loses contact with it.
And now I want to share with you some of the most important comments from today's joint congressional hearing on UFO UAPs.
Any branch of the United States government or defense contractors possess technology?
Sir, there's documentation that I believe was submitted for the record that was approved for release by the U.S. Pentagon, by the Department of Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, and it states one of the reasons why my predecessor program, OSAP, was trying to collect material of unknown origin.
Was it successfully collected?
It was not. What happened is that there was an aerospace contract company that requested to divest itself of the material that was collected in the 1950s. Right. Unfortunately, that didn't actually occur.
So let's dive into that. That's the Bigelow Aerospace, correct? So
yes, sir.
There was a journalist, Christopher Sharp, who said that there was a transfer between Lockheed Martin, Bigelow Aerospace, and the CIA allegedly blocked this. Can you describe that?
What I can say is that it was blocked. Why it was blocked, I can only surmise. I was part of some conversations later on with some of those contract personnel where they had told all of us that is accurate. What we required was a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force in order to make that complete, and that never occurred. And so when Secretary Mattis became Secretary of Defense, I decided it would be appropriate for me to try to receive a memo from him as SecDef, as Secretary of Defense, if we could not get a memo from the Secretary of the Air Force to transfer that material.
So if that material exists today, who's in possession?
Sir, I wouldn't be able to have that conversation in an open hearing. We'd probably have to have that.
Okay, my question to you then is, if we were in a secure setting, if we were in a SCIF, would you be able to provide or get access to something, whether it's visuals or material that we could put our hands on, or biologics, that would convince me, that would show me that we have non-human origins?
Sir, that decision would not be mine. That would be to the gatekeepers still in the U.S. government.
And who would so if you were in our shoes, where would you go from here? How would you get that information? A lot of times we just don't know who to ask because we don't know where to go next. So if you were in our shoes, where would you go?
Well, I prefer to answer that question in a closed session. However, we established Aero for that very purpose, and unfortunately, under its previous leadership, it failed. So one would hope that they would have the authorities necessary to do that. Let's hope that this new iteration of leadership will be successful.
In the discussions, it's simply about material, or is there discussion about it was previously testified that there was biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the reporting that biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of these phenomenon, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that simply because I don't have the expertise.
But was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes, yes.
We have, is it multiple types of creatures or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Okay.
Mr. Shellenberger, you're particularly familiar with the Langley Air Force Base incident a year ago? Are you familiar?
Just from what I read in the
Just
news.
from what you've read?
Yeah.
I would imagine a large percentage of the American population became aware of that with the Wall Street Journal article. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And were you aware of that incident prior to the Wall Street Journal article?
No.
To the rest of the panel, was the Wall Street Journal article the first time that y'all were made aware of what was essentially an over 2-week UAP frenzy over Langley Air Force Base? Were y'all aware of this prior to the Wall Street Journal article? Anybody? Show of hands. Yes,
sir.
Dr. Gallaudet, could you give me how did you become aware of it?
A colleague of mine who I referenced previously, Chris Mellon, he wrote an extensive article about this, that there were other incursions of drones over Langley before this, as well as many, many military installations over the last 5 decades.
And it's my understanding that there's been an ever-increasing in number, and I'm trying to think how to say this because I wear 2 different hats. I'm still in the Air Force. So, I mean, it seems that they're becoming increasingly brash, and the question that we really have to figure out is it China or is it non-human? And I think that's the biggest question the American people want to know. If it's China, it's scary because they have a lot of technology that we cannot explain. And if it's non-human, that's scary because we don't know the intent. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, Congressman, and in fact, I really believe that we should use this hearing as a catalyst to improve and bolster our air defense capabilities and our maritime domain awareness capabilities, because obviously there are holes in it, whether it be UAP of non-HI direction or NHI direction, or, like as you say, sir, China or any other adversary.
I think we all know that there's something going on. Mr. Elizondo, based on your knowledge of UAP sightings, do you believe it's fair to say that they are especially common near nuclear sites?
Yes, sir. Mr. Congressman, I absolutely am convinced of that, as are my colleagues inside the government.
And the reason why I pose that question, and this has been one of my talking points from the beginning, is, Oak Ridge is in Tennessee. The so-called weather balloon that drifted, that we now know was controlled, it passed near Oak Ridge. It obviously is a sensitive site, both of interest to our adversaries and to whatever else this is. Because we know that at military installations, at sensitive locations, such as nuclear facilities, that we're seeing this take place. So the question is what is it? Do you believe they've caused an irregular activity, and why might they be interested in those sites?
Sir, in some cases, it's actually regular activity. You'd be surprised. There's actually documentation right now that's been submitted. It's not just Oak Ridge. It's Savannah River Site, SRS. It's also Los Alamos. A lot of our sensitive R&D locations appear to be under some sort of surveillance and monitoring. Why? Well, because a lot of innovation comes out of those areas, a lot of new technologies, a lot of, if you will, disruptive technologies that we use for our national defense originates out of those locations, and advanced concepts in physics as well. So if I was doing any type of reconnaissance, even on a foreign adversary, that's a great target to start with.
Sure, and again, this has been one of my talking points. I do have questions. What role might the Department of Energy or its subsidiaries or affiliates have in this type of technology? Or possessing this type of technology, whether it's ours or others. Mr. Gallaudet, I think your testimony has been pretty clear, but would you please reiterate that do you believe UAPs pose a threat to pilots? Excuse me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They were threatening Navy pilots during the exercise that my people were involved with in 2015. And it's my understanding they're risking pilot safety, commercial and military today.
Well, considering, and I understand that there's a need in some cases to keep certain technologies secret, but you believe that it is posing a threat to our personnel, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I think it's reasonable to conclude that if there is a threat to our personnel who are serving our country faithfully, that there be oversight.
100%, Congressman. And in fact, that's the one thing that we've not talked about enough during this hearing is the fact that the government executive branch not sharing with Congress what it knows about UAP infringes on your legislative and oversight responsibilities to such an extent that's very concerning. I mean, what else are we, if you look at national security or intelligence or foreign affairs or appropriations, you all have oversight and legislative responsibility regarding those. This UAP issue may be the greatest issue of our time, and it's being hid from you.
Well, I mean, and to your point, I think we've seen over the decades that we have certain adversaries like China, like Russia, that technologically speaking are not as advanced as us, that they lack some of the lethality that we have, and that we've seen that they've gone after our technologies and in some cases succeeded, in particular with missile technology. And so again, my concern, whether this technology emanates from us or otherworldly, that we know that we possess it. And where's the accountability? Where are the stopgaps? What are the guarantees that if this were to fall in enemy hands, that it isn't immediately weaponized against us? And I'll say this, it is clear from my experience and what I've seen that there is something out there. The question is it ours? Is it someone else's? Or is it otherworldly? And Madam Chairman, I would posit that as the legislative body, as the regulatory body, we must know. And anyone who prevents us from gaining access to that information, I would consider that criminality. Because we have U.S. personnel who may very well be in harm's way. We have technology that ultimately may threaten our very existence. With that, Madam Chairman, I thank you for your indulgence, and I yield back.
And we also learned today the United States has UFO, UAP videos from satellites. The United States also has FLIR, infrared and video recordings of UFO, UAPs in full color from our low Earth orbit satellites. That the intelligence program called Immaculate Constellation has hundreds of UFO photos from helicopters. And today in the hearing, the former head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Lou Elizondo, said straight out, loud and clear, quote, "We are not alone in the cosmos," close quote. And Ian, doesn't it feel tonight like we're finally getting a lot closer to official confirmation that we are not alone in this universe, that our government has known that for decades and may be being told the whole truth might still happen in this 21st century? And I'll be talking about some new updates that I've received from whistleblowers at the Conscious Life Expo in the LAX Hilton on Saturday, February 8th in Los Angeles. You can go to the Conscious Life website for tickets at consciouslifeexpo.com. It's a fun conference. Ian is going to be there with others that I know, and it's fun to get together after the conference segments and sit down and talk after midnight. And Ian, what's the mood in the chat now tonight?
Hi, Linda. Yes, it's been a lively chat tonight. We've got many people who are adding their own experiences as well as their own thoughts on what's been happening today on this historic day. I spent the day with monitoring about 3 watch parties and dipping between different ones, and also linking up with Alan Steinfeld from New Realities, who was live from the Congress himself. So we've had a really exciting day, and it's really good to connect with people and
Yeah.
people in the chat. I think maybe Linda, if you can think of something, we can perhaps run some sort of poll from people. But I think people are quite positive about what was happening, and people are quite glad that this subject is really being taken seriously. And even if we are still having a lot of problems where people are still saying they can only talk about things in a secure setting, that we're still having these discussions.
Yes, and it's great to hear that Alan and others were in Washington at this time, which I feel it has a sense of history, that it is no longer going to be a stop-start controlled by the Pentagon, if I may say that, that finally that new machinery is being put into place by people who actually now want this huge headline to break open around the world, that it is now go. We want everyone to know we're not alone, but hanging are all of those questions that were being asked in the various sessions. What do we know for real about the different types of life forms? You know how they were kind of, I'd say, stepping around that question. And it's very clear that these are people who know a great deal. But the more comfortable position is that's coming, not now.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say is that I was speaking today in the chats on these watch parties, etc., and WhatsApp groups with people who are really positive about what's happening, but also people who have had first-hand interactions with ETs and non-human intelligences. We were all watching carefully, and we're still a long way. Although we managed to get mention of crash retrievals today, we're still a long way of getting abductions and people's experiences with non-human intelligences, the face-to-face interactions that we know has been going on for years and years. That is still yet to be acknowledged and recognized, and so we're still quite away from that. There are so many people who would like to come forward and share their experiences and their own interactions, and they deserve the vindication that they deserve from years of ridicule and non-recognition from official bodies.
And there is one huge part of all of this that was not touched, not one word, and that is the decades, probably centuries, of the harvest of blood fluids, chemistries, tissues, eggs, and sperm from animal life all over this planet, which is the place where I came into this back in September of 1979. And the animal mutilations have always been something that government people say, we need that to be held off. I don't personally agree. I think the whole story should be told in truth. And if we understood what the true reason is for a harvest of eggs, sperm, fluids, blood, and chemistries, if we understood, does it have something to do with keeping another life form alive? That's one kind of story. If not, it's another. But it is a huge part of the whole. And my hope is that they will stop doing microsurgery on the huge, gigantic story that links in with the entire conscious universe and putting it down into little pieces that are considered to be digestible, I think would be a good word. But maybe that's a question to the audience tonight. How many of you feel that we really do need to have all of the big story, not parceled out over the next 100 years, but that we deserve to know the whole huge big story now and then adjust back as an evolving civilization? That's my point of view. And I would be very interested in how many of you feel that this time the hearings have a sense of practical and grounded knowledge that would help us tell and open up the big story. How many of you think that's true, and how many of you would tell the story with the bloodless, trackless animal mutilations. Ian, are you there?
Yes, well, let's ask the audience. Yeah, I am. I'm having some connection problems, but I'm going to get Brad to reconnect me in a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, well, let's ask the audience. Let's see if Eric can put up a poll that will reflect that in some way. Can you just clarify that again, Linda, exactly what you want the poll to say, or what we're asking the audience, then we can get Eric to put the poll up.
Why don't we say how many people would vote for telling the whole huge story of all of it, whatever, all facets, including the harvesting of sperm and eggs and blood tissue from animals around the world for who knows how many centuries. In other words, if the real story, which goes on for eons, were known one way or the other in many, many facets that are complicated, and some people are concerned that humanity can't stand the whole truth. I disagree. I think that if we were told all of it and we began to acclimate ourselves to it, it could be helpful perhaps to the evolution of our own lives on the earth. And Brad is trying to reconnect with Ian because we have this strange problem where periodically we lose the connection with Ian, and Brad has to reconnect. Yes, I just heard you come in. Thank you.
Okay, and by the way, we are working on a fix for that. And,
good.
So we'll keep trying different things. Okay, Linda, we've put the poll up. Do you think we should have full disclosure about ETs and UAPs? So that's what we've put up at the moment to ask for. Should we have full disclosure?
Well, full disclosure includes the subject that is so difficult. There are two that are difficult: human abductions and animal mutilations. So that would be in my question.
That's right, yes. We used to say it was three things: the crash retrievals, the human abductions, and the animal mutilations. So those are the three main ones that we need to get through. But it's also worth mentioning that during the crash retrievals, as was reported, and you've reported this before in certain MJ12 documents, that bodies were found on board a craft, and it's not clear if those were the earliest reports of animal mutilations, and that our governments were perhaps aware of these way, way back. And I'll also point people towards the very earliest reports where people say that well-prepared teams came in to clear up areas and must have been aware of what was going on.
Right. And I have talked with someone who has worked for an agency who said my reporting that is in old documents, if you know how to find it, about them finding inside of some kind of paneled walls were some mutilated animal parts. And that has been a part of this. Now, I'm not trying to overwhelm the situation on animal mutilations. I'm using it as an example of a very, very long, complex technologies that have excised hearts out of the chests of animals without any surgery to the outside of the body. Very advanced. If we knew the whole big story of the different types of non-humans, which are allies, which are neutral, which are enemies, would something that on the face of it seems difficult to accept, the bloodless, trackless mutilation of animals, the abduction of humans around the planet, if we understood the whole story, it might be that we would then begin to see more what the non-humans are trying to do, what problems they have. Because partial truths, I have always felt, are the wrong way to go. I think you need to have the whole truth to understand the big picture. And that's why I asked that question, not because I am loading in my own mind anything more about animal mutilations or human abductions than has not already been reported for decades, literally for decades. It's just that we are in such a strange situation where the government for decades has found, that's what has surprised all the political people, how there was so much control on everything to keep it completely away from the public. And that goes to Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso's statement about the internecine warfare in Washington, D.C., that he was intimately involved in seeing the problems that they had because of the internecine warfare when General Eisenhower was president of the United States. It's now a lot of time later. So maybe there is the possibility that we now finally can learn a much, much bigger, complex story. Oh, it's a reconnection time. Well, let's see. Ian is coming back, I think.
Yeah, I'm here. And I want to say that we've got Cyborg 165 HDO in the chat tonight, who says, and he's this person is one of many experiences in the chat this evening, and we welcome them all. This is a safe place to share your experiences. They took me in 1991 in Garden Grove, California. I was 6 years old. The Greys took me, cloned me, and stamped me with a synthetic chip, biotechnology implants to upload information and download brain thoughts. So again, we've got the reports of people knowing perhaps the purpose or part of the purpose of their abduction and saying that they were actually cloned on board craft. Again, this may be something that is very difficult for people to face up to and realize, but it's a truth that should be shared.
Yes, personally, I think that genetic manipulation of all kinds of life forms on Earth have gone through phase after phase after phase, and that to the non-humans, no matter whether they are friendly, supportive, or whatever their, let's just say their interaction with Earth and humans is, positive or negative, that if you looked at the last 270 million years, as I have discussed, that a whistleblower told me is a beginning point of genetic manipulation on this planet by competing extraterrestrials, then all of life on this planet and other planets might be in the category of tests, experiments. But wouldn't you say that in the last, I would say 20 years, I've been trying to get to the bottom of all of this for 45 years, it seems to me in the last 20 years, last 2 decades, that there have been more and more, I don't know, not disclosure is not quite, but efforts by the part of the tall whites, Nordics, Greys, reptilians maybe, blues, there's a lot of the different ones who have tried in different ways to say to human abductees that they experiment with life sometimes to keep them alive, that we're in a complex universe and there can be experiments that are planet-wide over centuries or millennia. And that's the part, the big, big, huge picture that I think if all of us knew a much bigger picture over a very long period of time, then we would maybe not be concerned that we are living our lives on a planet that has had a lot of interaction with it and will continue. And eventually, for us to be able to stand up as an educated species who hopefully can join in with the technologies that can go into timelines, manipulate timelines, use dimensions and cushion shots to go light years. I just find that so exciting, and yet we humans are so disconnected from it as a species. That's the box that I would like to see expand with our questions and insights from our government and from non-humans willing to communicate truth. Okay, Ian, what are we seeing in terms of questions and reply on that, a bigger question?
But the poll is showing a 97% yes. People want full disclosure, everything. And
Yeah.
people are also saying that they can handle everything, even if it's a difficult truth. They deserve to know and they need to know. And Ryan LeBeau sums it up nicely and says, whole story now. So that's good.
Yeah.
As above, so below, says Linda, what are your thoughts on Immaculate Constellation mentioned in the UAP hearing today? And have you read the report submitted to Congress? I guess they're talking about the full report. I think that's a 12-page report that was referred to.
Well, like you, like everybody listening, none of us have been able to see it or read it. So my first priority would be, is there some way to get a copy of the Immaculate Constellation so that everybody could read it? And there are a lot of documents that I have some knowledge exist, and I feel that same way about them. We're being left out of the whole 10-course meal of information. And on the other side of that is this question. What is it that has been hinted over and over and over again, over at least since World War II, either in documents, personal letters, writings in hand notes in books, or secret meetings, in which the dialogue about what is going on with extraterrestrials boils down to, are they hostile? Are they neutral? Are they compassionate? And in that kind of deep discussion, maybe the idea of anything negative might be diffused, positive might be diffused, but we would start being able to ask questions like about the Immaculate Constellation document that we wouldn't have until we could read all of this material as well. So we're on an uneven playing ground with all of the government and military sections who have felt that it was their responsibility and their duty to hide all of this from the world. Why? That's the part I would like to understand, and I don't know if the Immaculate Constellation would end up answering all of that. But Ian, is it your impression from today and talking with Alan and others that there's only been the one presentation of the Immaculate Constellation that Shellenberger has had?
Yeah, it was Michael Shellenberger who first brought this new phrase of this new project to our attention. I think it was referred back to Lou Elizondo as well, but whether I'm waiting for the transcripts for everything and the complete breakdown to see where we are and where this goes. It's also worth noting that Shellenberger also mentioned about our subject of tonight's program, that he said, as I'm quoting here, a source told me they saw a 13-minute full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean about 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said, The orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Router Network, which the Department of Defense uses to transmit classified information.
And Ian, this is the perfect time for me to insert what I have talked about many times over the last 6 or 7 years of doing Earthfiles YouTube channel. And that was the World Bank and the DIA analyst retiring that met me, where we all three traveled in December of 1999. And that one of the most vivid aspects of that 7-hour discussion was his explaining how the extraterrestrials find different layers of places that they occupy on our planet. And it was in that discussion, as his talking about the Nordics, that they prefer for all of their activities on Earth to go down below the bottoms of the oceans and the seas and the lakes and the bays. They go down through the matter, and they come out into huge caverns that their computers were able to show long ago, gigantic caverns in the center of this planet that would not be suspected on other planets. And that one of these huge caverns was reported just a year or two ago as being so large that Mount Everest could be in a cavern. So the idea that there are extraterrestrials, they're biological, even if they make a lot of AI, they're still the biological component of the extraterrestrial equation. And that they have been interacting with life, water, minerals, mining, asteroids in our solar system for at least 270 million years, is what the DIA analyst told me. Well, once you start looking at the Earth and currently 2024 through that lens, then our planet, all of the ETs have the ability to come from space through our atmosphere and down into our oceans without stopping. Now, where they all define their territory inside of the Earth, underneath the bottoms of oceans, bays, and lakes, inside of mountains, which is what I've been told the Greys prefer to be inside of mountains that are projected up from the land. The complexity of our own planet in terms of layers of other intelligences over a period of 270 million years, doing experiments, basing themselves where the surface life would not know they were here. So that part of the undersea, it always has been there for me, as this is a strong component of the interaction between certain non-humans who choose to base far below the surface of the land that we humans live on. And that is a whole other lens for looking at all of the other bodies in our solar system and beyond. And we've all joked, but I keep reading this, that there could be as many as 3 trillion galaxies in this one universe, and each galaxy could have 3 or 5 trillion stars. I mean, it begins to be overwhelming in the sense of the size of all of this. And if the beings that are interacting with our Earth and have been, let's say, for 270 million years, the difference, the gulf between our ability to even comprehend what it means when they say that they manipulate time, that they go into time to test and change and defer things coming in the future, but for whose benefit? That they can look for all kinds of rare metals by sending out just one AI that can travel through space as AI, land on an asteroid, and bring back or deliver all of what they want analysis of asteroids. It's a whole huge, bigger, gigantic evolution. And it doesn't make me feel afraid. It makes me feel enthusiastic to keep learning more and more. And I would love to see another solar system through the lens of advanced technology that could get there in seconds and back. Doesn't that make you feel excited just to even want to learn about that, Ian?
Yes, and I think we're all on this path to learning and discovery. Many people in the chat are saying they don't need disclosure because they already know about the ET presence among us, and I think that that's true. It's just that we need people to catch on, and we need people to share this. This is a reality. This is a reality that people have faced for years, but they faced it with no official recognition.
And that the operative...
And I think that's what people need. We're better.
And that the operating word or box for it all is truth. Let's go. If we've been 270 million years of manipulation, well, let's go 270 million years of just absolutely truth and finding out everything about this complex cosmos that we can. Now,
and mentioned Linda, you mentioned about the Conscious Life Expo.
Yes.
There, we'll be posting information on the Earthfiles website and links where people can buy their tickets directly for your events on in the chat as well. So we're looking forward to meeting people there. Come to Los Angeles. It's a fantastic expo, and we'd love to meet up with you and share and share good times together at one.
Yeah, and somehow we have to find one of these interfaces between you in England and us in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that doesn't sputter. This one dropped in and out, but try one more time about Conscious Life Expo. Is in February, and I'll be there February 8th doing a presentation that is very interesting to me, and I hope it will be to everyone. And Ian, right now, what is the overgestalt of the comments coming in the chat now?
A very positive from people in our chat. It's a very busy chat today. People are very pleased to be here. We're welcoming new people as well. Welcome aboard, and we're looking forward to people are looking forward to sharing these historic moments with you, Linda.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, Ian.
This forward.
When you were watching, like all the rest of us were, to watch the joint congressional hearing, was there any specific statement or content that shocked you?
Well, it's as much as what isn't said. That's the thing, where people are still saying they can only feel that they can talk within a skiff.
Right.
And as someone says, I'd love to be on the wall, fly on the wall in these skiffs. Well, yeah, we all would. People are still afraid to talk, even
right.
Opportunity. They still say they're bound by oath. And I think this is what's so important. It's taking so much to do the unwrapping and get to the bottom of it. We're still tiptoeing around the edges. That's shocking.
Yes. And in terms of our audience, can you ask generally of the people who have had abduction experiences, what is the physical type of non-human that you have interacted with, either in dream, telepathy, or physical proximity in a room? Which type? Because that's one of the hardest things to pin down. Which of the non-human intelligences are doing what in any specific cycle on our planet? I've always felt that since starting with the animal mutilation investigations long ago. And I'm curious, if we do a poll right now with Eric's help, what is the type, make like a sentence or two description, that you all have interacted with, and see what the percentages break down in terms of the type of non-humans in the Earthfiles YouTube channel audience.
Yes, we could wrap up. It's all right, I'm here. There's just a slight delay today. We could wrap up this current poll of 95 to 96%. Eric will be posting the results of that at the moment, and maybe we'll just do the other one. But it's a very important point that the first question that we always ask people is what types, if they remember, did they interact with? What is the type? Another question that I ask often is, do you know the purpose of your abduction? If the people who have been abducted know or have some idea of why they've been abducted. And you mentioned a very important point there about it being the dreams, because some people are still saying it's dreams. And in fact, Kelly N says, I've been abducted ever since I was 2 years of age. Most recently was early summer. That was the last time I remember. John Smith says, I thought it was dreams for years, and yet a sister said it did happen to you. So we have these things where people have perhaps thought it was just a dream, albeit a very realistic dream. But often the case is that the dreams are representing a reality that's perhaps been hidden away from them.
And I think there's one other huge subterranean subject that is so difficult, and that is, I think that our Earth history, our solar system history, has related a lot to conflict between extraterrestrial civilizations. And I suppose, like a child, I wish that we were in a universe where there didn't have to be war or violence or competition. But I think that that is part of the makeup. And therefore, what is the evolutionary history in this solar system of warring ETs? We have had the information in the briefing to President Ronald Reagan about the tronoloid insects from Epsilon Eridani, only 10.5 light years from Earth, that are supposed to be a potential threat. Well, what about those that have tried to help Homo sapien? And that is perhaps one of the most fascinating subjects, is which type are interacting with humans today and have in the past, and that the Anunnaki and Sumerians and all of the ancient histories are probably related directly to all of these political, let's say, challenges between extraterrestrial civilizations. And that we'll never, ever understand ourselves, Homo sapiens sapien, until we understand a great deal more about the extraterrestrial genetic manipulators that have worked on our planet, throughout the solar system and beyond. And I welcome everybody who has had any interaction, any information at an intel level, military level, abductee level, whatever it is, to communicate with me. And over the ensuing months, as perhaps we're getting closer and closer to finally the whole enchilada opening up, that I would like to do more Earthfiles with some of you who have the ability to illustrate, who can talk about a complex like when you are with something that is so complex, what is it that you, in your humanness, sense? That's a very important part of us understanding ourselves and the planet that we're on in relationship to this huge, huge opening story. As Lou Elizondo said it straight today, we are not alone in this cosmos. So chapters, pages yet to unfold. Ian, what have you gotten, before we sign off tonight, what have you gotten on this question about the types?
Yeah, we're running up the poll at the moment right now. I'm just going to go into it. What type of non-human have you interacted with? Greys at 30%, just gone to 31%. Nordic types 11%. Reptilian 9%. And others at 49%. So Greys 30, Nordics 12, Reptilian 10, others 49%.
Interesting.
And these are actual experiences who are sharing that with us. We've got 104 votes so far. So that just shows the breadth of people who are in the chat tonight who are not afraid to mention the types of ETs that are interacting with them.
And if those 104 people can do illustrations and send me your story of the best pieces that you have experienced and you think that others might benefit, start sending them to me. They can come in email with attachments and illustrations to me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com, because my dear colleague Ian Holling, he helps me try to go through all of the information that we get after our broadcasts on these different topics and questions. But I'm feeling that it is really, truly important for us humans at a non-military, non-government level that we try to share with each other what the facts are and the truths that we have experienced, and that the more we learn from each other who are not trying to be perpetual trillionaires or keep political geography boundaries or whatever else is driving the forces behind don't let anybody know anything, that on the opposite side is a whole bunch of us who would just really, really like to know the truth. And that part of getting there may be that the more we would share about non-humans, maybe the less walls between us and them would be built. And on that note, dear Ian, thank you so much for tonight, and Brad and Eric, everybody out there on this planet, beautiful blue and white Earth, that as we begin to see what may be coming in illustrations of other planets that the James Webb is suggesting also have life, that in the end we may learn that Earth is truly one of the most extraordinary planets, like a laboratory, a home, all kinds of things that it does. And that at this juncture, as we are now waiting for the headline that should go around the world on satellites in everywhere, what if Earth is sort of like a place where you bring new souls, and in this planet and all that it has, souls get stronger and stronger, maybe here than any place else, and that there is absolute truth in Rudolf Steiner's theosophy that J. Allen Hynek, the astronomer, told me privately one night when we were at a conference. Linda, one of the most important books that you could ever read is Theosophy by Rudolf Steiner. And when I did read it, I realized that what he was communicating and Steiner was trying to write about was a very specific and extraordinary relationship between what would be considered the ether of the cosmos, the matter of the biological mineral matter world, but that what was the most important force between those two was the soul, the intermediary between the ether and matter. And reading that book, I always felt that I didn't understand what was at the foundation of conflict in this universe, but that I am convinced that the yin and yang symbol represents what is going on in this universe. And the more we concentrate on the positive energy in our soul that we can feel, the stronger, hopefully, we will all be as we finally begin to actually learn real facts about other life in this cosmos and a future for humanity that may finally not have war. On that note, a huge agape hug to all of you. I love you around the world, and we'll see you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.